And welcome back. Time for this week's Capital Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitalBeatOK.com. Pat, the State Board of Equalization certified quite a bit of money for this legislative session, but it's still less than was authorized last year. What's up with that, and what's the reaction among state officials to this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting and kind of confusing thing, and the state officials admit that. Preston Dorfingler, who's the Secretary of Finance and runs the Office of Management and Enterprise Services for the governor, did analysis, and he said, we're raising more money than ever through the various forms of taxation, but the legislature is going to have less to appropriate. Well, that's because of the dedicated funds that go directly to, and this is not to start a quarrel over that, although that's an issue that can be discussed, but dedicated funds that go directly to things like pension deposits and other specified uses, including some in public education. So that's the reason, although revenues grew more than ever, the money available for spending is going to be about $188 million less than last year. Now, as Dorfingler said, from my perspective, to his credit, he said, hey, the sky is not falling. This is what we spent in fiscal year 2013 instead of what we spent in 2014. And it's 2.6%, if I remember right, it might be 2.3%. And that doesn't mean the sky is falling. It means the legislature is going to have to make some tough choices. And Scott Pruitt, the Attorney General, who sits on the Board of Equalization with several of the other statewide elected officials, made the point that he was very frustrated about the process and that he thinks there needs to be an improvement in the way the Tax Commission calculates their budget projections, their income projections. Without getting wonkish or down into the details, that's probably a legitimate criticism, although the Commission did exactly what they're supposed to. And all that the Board of Equalization, where the governor and Pruitt and others serve, all they can do is decide yes or no. Are we going to do this? Are we going to authorize X amount? What's interesting is that Pruitt, this got everybody's attention. He voted no on 2 of the 4 resolutions the BOE considered. Now, moving quickly on to the new speaker, Jeff Hickman, we've only had a little bit of interaction with him. I've only had a little bit of interaction with him, but he's just being very cautious. I think he would like to find a way to do a tax cut. But for example, his involvement in public safety issues, he's always been an advocate of doing more for the troopers. So he goes, okay, how are we going to do this and do a little more for corrections and a little more for troopers for starters among the state employees. So stay tuned on that.
Well, so given this tighter appropriations picture, given the sorts of things that we've seen, like from President David Boren in the Oklahoman last week. Right. Is Governor Fallin still sticking to her plan, wanting a tax cut?
Well, I'd say so. She did say in the meeting, and you never know how much of this is in the moment or how much is scripted, and it's possible it could be either one with Governor Fallin. But she asked Dorfingler, her man, and Ken Miller, the treasurer, specifically to set out to seek input from more economists and then to take a critical look at the process that Pruitt had referenced. So this is not a revenue failure. That's the thing to understand. There's a definition of a revenue failure, and this is barely half the way even towards that. It's not a revenue failure. She still wants a tax cut. That's what she said. The question becomes, the first measure to moving through the Senate would take away some deductions and have the effect, I believe, speaking of the Tax Commission, based on their analysis a few years ago, would have the effect of raising taxes on a small number of income taxpayers. And I don't think that's what the governor or Senate President Bingman want.
Yeah.
So watch that. Tax cut, you can't raise and lower at the same time unless you're doing some kind of a comprehensive look at the system. So that's going to be an issue.
All right, well, we'll be watching that. All right, quick, I'm going to give you a chance to do a little self-promotion here. You're, again, one of the stars of the annual Gridiron show. Tell us about this year's production.
Well, I just want to dangle a hint that there's a new fellow playing Obama, and he's fabulous. Does one number sharp to the tune of the ZZ Top song, Sharp Dressed Man. It's really going to bring the house down, I believe. Cindy Reich is back as Governor Fallin, but she's also playing Kathleen Sebelius in the first act, the federal act. I, your humble servant, am portraying again Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of State John Kerry. And then on the other side of the aisle, Representative Bridenstine out of Tulsa, and a certain controversial former legislator. www.okcgridiron.org. All the money we net after we pay expenses goes into a scholarship fund for young Oklahomans. It's next Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, 26th, 28th, and then March 1st. Be there.
There you go. The Gridiron Show. It's hilarious. All right, you can read more about these and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a good day.